Hi everyone, I am Abigail Guzman Tugawen from AMA Computer College Tuguegarao, and this time I am going to discuss to you about safety education and sports recreation. Safety education and sports and recreation. Many factors has influenced the susceptibility to injury. Some factors such as age, sex, and ability may not be easily alterable. However, others such as the use of personal protective equipment, physical fitness and conditioning, warm-up, rehabilitation after injury, and awareness of environmental hazards can be influenced to alter the risk. Probably the most well-known behavior to reduce sport-related injury is the decision to use protective gear. However, other measures such as appropriate choice of activities and environment and appropriate training and conditioning for the chosen activity. Personal protective equipment. For all sports and recreational activities, use of appropriate protective gear is crucial and may be the most familiar personal injury prevention measure. In recreational and exercise activities, interventions to encourage acceptance and use of personal protective gear are especially important because in these activities, as opposed to organized sports, a participant may have a little control over the environment, and participation generally is not governed by rules and policies. Appropriate gear use is multifaceted and includes obtaining the appropriate gear for the desired activity, ensuring that it fits properly, ensuring that it is well maintained and replaced when needed, using it consistently and properly. Physical fitness and conditioning. In recreation and fitness activities as well as in team sports governed by rules and policies, participants can take an active role in minimizing the risk of injury. For instance, a review of military and civilian studies demonstrate that participants with the lowest levels of physical fitness are at increased risk of injury when compared to more fit counterparts participating at a similar level. Warming up and stretching before exercise. Warm up and stretching exercise are common participation practices in many recreational and sporting activities. Undertaking an appropriate warm up before a strenuous activity has been shown to decrease injury risk. Warming up should consist of slowly increasing a participant's heart rate and body temperature and moving through the expected range of motion of activity. Examples is gentle golf swing and lower speed pitch. Rehabilitation after injury. Participants also use Participants also should ensure adequate rehabilitation and recovery time after an injury. For instance, in a review of a prevention of ankle sprains, the most commonly identified risk factor for a sprained ankle was a history of an ankle sprain. In particular, it appears that the greatest risk is within 6 months of the injury, suggesting that altering participation or use of a semi-rigid orthotic may reduce re-injury risk during this time. In addition, participants sustaining a concussion and subsequently returning to physical competition before they have fully recovered are more susceptible to a second concussion and possibly even have an elevated risk of sudden death from brain injury. Awareness of environmental hazards. In addition to choosing an appropriate activity and preparing themselves with the best available training and equipment, participants should be attentive to the environment in which they engage in their chosen activity. For instance, a helmeted bicyclist on a bike path is likely to at lower risk for injury than a helmeted bicyclist riding on a roadside with motor vehicle traffic. In addition, an ice hockey game on an ungroomed frozen pond may result in more injuries than a game among the same participants in a well-groomed ice rink. Although some participants may not be able to change to another venue, they should be attentive to their current surroundings and make any possible changes to reduce injury risk. For example, is removing tripping hazards on and near the edges of the basketball court. Environmental services. Environmental services refers to the qualitative functions of natural, non-produced assets of land, water, and air, including the related ecosystem and their biodata. These services includes the provision of raw materials and energy used to produce goods and services, the absorption of water from human activities, and the basic role of in life support and the provision of other amenities such as landscape. There are three basic types of environmental services, which are the disposable service, which reflects the functions of the natural environment as an absorptive sink for residuals. The productive services, which reflects the economic functions of providing natural resource inputs and space for production and consumption, and the consumer or consumption services, which provide for the physiological as well as recreational and related needs of human beings. Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the process of discovering new ways of combining resources. When the market value generated by this new combination of resources is greater than the market value, these resources can generate elsewhere, individually or in some other combination. The entrepreneur makes a profit. Entrepreneurship is both the study of how new business are created as well as the actual process of starting a new business. The term is used interchangeably. An entrepreneur is someone who has an idea and who works to create a product or service that people will buy by building an organization to support those sales. Morals of the citizenry or social welfare concerns. Spiritual upliftment. Spiritual upliftment involves the growth of their sense of self, their unique potential, their understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, and their will to achieve. As their curiosity about themselves and their place in the world increases, they try to answer for themselves some of life's fundamental questions. They develop the knowledge, skills, understanding, qualities, and attitudes they need to foster their own inner lives and non-material well-being. Cultural awareness and world peace. The most important change is thus how best to approach this unity in diversity by fully taking into consideration the infinite wealth of the cultures of the world by averting the fear flags when confronted with otherness. Peace has been and remains a permanent ideal and aspiration as well as the right and a duty. However, in our fast-paced, interconnected world, peace is a race. While world wars are becoming, it may be hoped, a thing of a past. A thing of a past, violence, civil strife, and conflict continue to define the lives of millions. Internal conflicts and terrorist attacks demonstrate that the presence of peace can never be taken for granted. As an ongoing process of political, economic, and cultural negotiation, peace requires constant engineering, vigilance, and active participation. It implies commitment and a long-term vision, and this entails a blend of traditional and contemporary ways of understanding the roots of conflicts, ways of mitigating violence, and paths towards reconciliation and healing. Population explosion and world peace. Among two-thirds of humanity, population is rising faster than food production, and living standards and vast numbers of people daily experience the deprivation and suffering that inevitably result when population levels approach too close to carrying the capacity. Recognizing that continued population growth poses a great threat to world peace, the developed countries are paying increasing attention to the possibility of slowing down the rate of growth of the population of developing nations. The main approach to the problem has been to reduce fertility through the introduction of contraceptive devices and techniques. Getting people used these devices and techniques has thus far proven extremely difficult. Adoption of fertility control has been left to the discretion of domestic units, so-called family planning programs. Yet, it is generally recognized that family planning programs by themselves are ineffectual means of population control. Philippine values and political participation. Political attitudes and behaviors of individuals play an important role in shaping social movements in any society. These attitudes and behaviors contribute to the elections of specific types of leaders to support for particular policies and to strengthening the social movement. Political attitudes and behavior partly determine whether a person engages political processes or turns away from anything political, and also whether political and social institutions are transformed or whatever the status quo is maintained. In any society, individuals may hold diverse political attitudes and engage political processes in differing and possibly opposing ways. Human rights and awareness of human rights violation. Human rights are rights inherent to all human beings regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights includes the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, and the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. And to protect human rights, it is to ensure that people receive some degree of decent, humane treatment. To violate the most basic human rights, on the other hand, is to deny individuals for their fundamental moral entitlements. It is, in a sense, to treat them as if they are less than human and undeserving of respect and dignity. Examples are acts typically deemed crimes against humanity, including genocide, torture, slavery, rape, and forced sterilization or medical experimentation, and deliberate starvation. Because these policies are sometimes implemented by governments, limiting the unrestrained power of the state is an important part of international law. Underlying law that prohibits the various crimes against humanity is the principle of non-discrimination and the notion that certain basic rights are applied universally. So, that's all. Thank